Our story opens on a warm evening at the Riverside Mansion, the venue where the upcoming wedding would soon unfold. It was a scheduled catering tasting, an elegant affair designed to let the couple and their family sample the cuisine that would be served on the big day. In attendance were John, his ex-wife Angela, their daughter, the bride-to-be, the groom, and the groom's parents. Though cordial, the atmosphere carried an undercurrent of subtle tension, an emotional texture only those who endure complex family dynamics can sense. As the group moved from one tasting station to the next, John momentarily found himself standing apart, admiring the venue's gardens. It was then that the groom's father approached, gently grasped John's arm, and whispered something quietly but firmly. "You have nothing to worry about. We're helping the kids pay for the wedding." The gesture wasn't condescending. It was sincere, almost compassionate. And yet, it landed with the weight of a silent verdict. John, who had all intentions of contributing generously, realized in that moment that a story had likely been told about him, one in which he'd been cast as the absentee or unwilling parent. The groom's parents had always been regular fixtures at Angela's family gatherings, Thanksgiving dinners, holiday parties, and summer weekends at her seashore home. John, living out of state in a retirement community, had little exposure to them. The math added up quickly. Angela had been painting a narrative, one brushstroke at a time, over months or perhaps even years. This was a subtle, signature act in what John had come to recognize as her personal art form. Sleight of mind, a slow and sophisticated manipulation that rewrites perception through calculated omissions and artful distortions. In the months leading up to the wedding, John quietly and consistently contributed. He issued monthly corporate distributions of $10,000, mailing each check directly to his daughter. 7 of the 8 checks were cashed. The 8th was not, perhaps a signal that the wedding costs had been met or that his support was no longer needed. No explanation ever came. Not a word, not even an immediate thank you. Financial transparency had long been elusive in the post-divorce years. Angela maintained a cloak of secrecy around most money matters involving the children, another control tactic cloaked in protection or privacy. When John once asked for a copy of the sales agreement for their eldest daughter's car, something any responsible father would request, he received nothing. His inquiries about monthly payment amounts were met with deflections and vague answers. Eventually, Angela simply told him what his half would be, offering no documentation. Whether accurate or not, John had no choice but to trust her. One of his children later framed his concern as a sign of distrust. "You just don't believe in Mom," the child said. But this wasn't about belief. It was about accountability, about the right to understand and participate in financial decisions that affected his children. In another situation involving a second car purchase for another child, John was asked to provide a down payment in cash. He later discovered that Angela had financed her own share when the first vehicle was traded in, a move that quietly shifted more financial burden to John under the illusion of fairness and equity. This type of manipulation was subtle, but it was continuous, and it wore down both his finances and his spirit. The pattern was always the same: opacity, control, and narrative manipulation, with John cast as distant, demanding, or untrusting roles he neither earned nor deserved, but which were socially easier to accept than the complex truth. The wedding day arrived, wrapped in sunshine and oppressive summer heat. Still, the mood was joyous. The family dog, Lily, an affectionate Australian shepherd, proudly served as the ring bearer. The outdoor ceremony was breathtaking. The bride was radiant. The groom, beaming. For a moment, it felt like everything a parent could ever hope for had materialized in one beautiful day. During the reception, John was permitted to offer a brief toast. He spoke with grace and sincerity, praising Angela for raising such a smart and articulate young woman. And it was the truth. Angela had been a devoted mother when she wasn't undermining him. It was a bittersweet moment. John meant every word, even knowing that behind the scenes, Angela was slowly rewriting his role in the family script. It was a masterstroke of emotional theater, graceful on the surface, deceptive underneath. Angela's long game had worked. Through years of subtle distortions and emotional triangulation, she had likely planted negative perceptions of John in the minds of the in-laws, perhaps even in the hearts of her own children. Bit by bit, she had redrawn his image with shadows. What puzzled John most was how little others seemed to question the narrative. After years of divorce, how could Angela possibly know details about his finances? Why did no one stop to wonder why a man who faithfully supported his children and then was mailing tens of thousands of dollars would be painted as disengaged or stingy? These weren't just misunderstandings. They were manufactured myths, spread quietly and consistently by someone who understood that social currency often outlasts financial support. Angela knew her audience. She knew when to smile, when to sigh, and when to plant just enough doubt to turn empathy her way. Angela's behavior was not defined by overt malice. Rather, it was a slow, calculated erosion of John's identity in the eyes of others, a manipulation of trust, memory, and perception. What she couldn't control directly, she influenced emotionally. What she couldn't discredit with facts, she undermined with insinuation. John had hoped the wedding would be a time of healing and unity. In truth, it became yet another chapter in the ongoing struggle to protect not just his relationship with his children, but the truth of who he really was. It reminded him that even in joyful milestones, the games of perception and control can quietly persist, coloring the most cherished moments with quiet pain. Angela and John's youngest daughter had been suffering for weeks from acute ulcerative colitis. Her condition had worsened to the point where her specialist, Dr. John Gallagher, a respected pediatric gastroenterologist, recommended immediate preoperative testing and, most likely, a radical surgical intervention at a renowned regional children's hospital. Although the divorce was final, and both parents technically shared medical decision-making authority, their real-world power dynamic could not have been more lopsided. Angela managed a thriving service business and enjoyed an ever-present entourage of employees, neighbors, and extended family willing to step in at a moment's notice. John, in stark contrast, ran a solo legal practice and carried the stigma of years of whispered smears. In hospital hallways and waiting rooms, reputation often precedes credentials, and in the eyes of many, John had already been written out of the script. It didn't take long before John noticed the subtle but unmistakable signs of marginalization. Nurses addressed Angela by first name while referring to John as the dad. Doctors delivered updates with their bodies angled toward Angela, their eyes rarely meeting John's. When John asked questions, answers were short, sometimes curt, and often routed back through Angela. The patient room contained a fold-down parent bed, strictly intended for one caregiver at a time. Yet Angela insisted John remain overnight, while claiming the sole sleeping surface for herself. For 3 nights, John dozed in a rigid, upright chair, waking at every monitor beep and labored breath. Eventually, for survival, he began slipping out after midnight to make the 40-minute drive home, doing laundry, walking the dog, answering client emails, returning by dawn with fresh coffee, Wawa hoagies, and homemade soup from his sister-in-law. On the nights he stayed, hospital security politely tolerated him sleeping in a darkened visitor alcove. John's motivation was simple: be present, be useful, be calm. But, in hindsight, he was stepping into a perfectly baited snare. A pattern emerged. Each time John was in the room, Angela would drift into the hallway and place hushed phone calls. Her voice, just audible, delivered a familiar refrain. "John's not here again. He just doesn't show up. I'm doing this alone." After one overheard call, John quietly said, "Angela, I can hear you." She retreated farther down the corridor and ended the call mid-sentence. Weeks of such whispers turned visiting relatives into wary observers. Even John's teenage son began greeting him with frosty indifference. The smear was metastasizing, cell by cell, conversation by conversation. During an afternoon break, John walked to the social work office, hoping for clarity. By coincidence, the assigned caseworker was, at that very moment, meeting with Angela in the patient room. John waited 75 agonizing minutes. When she finally emerged, her face carried equal parts empathy and embarrassment. She revealed that Angela had told admission staff John had no legal standing, hinting he might not even be the biological father. Hospital protocol required staff to honor the alleged custodial parent until paperwork proved otherwise. John's access had been quietly curtailed on day one. Stunned but composed, John drove home, contacted his attorney, retrieved certified copies of the custody decree, and had them overnight to hospital counsel. The next morning, John was summoned to a conference room. Around the table, the assistant medical director, risk management counsel, head of nursing, chief of security, the caseworker, and 2 administrators. Dr. Gallagher joined by speakerphone. A security officer opened with surveillance footage. He did hallway exchanges involving Angela and a frequent visitor, a friend whose sister, a nurse several cities away, supplied unvetted medical advice. Staff had acted on some of that advice, inadvertently contradicting Dr. Gallagher's plan. John produced the court orders. Legal bowed. Questions about blood type died on the vine. The paternity smear dissolved under the weight of notarized reality. Later that week, a contrast study requiring liters of intestinal fluid ended in disaster. The solution evacuated prematurely. The teenager's vital signs nosedived. Angela collapsed theatrically in the ER corridor, clutching a family friend. John was paged ER stat via back hallway. At his daughter's bedside, John translated monitor numbers, heart rate, oxygen saturation, blood pressure, using calm, clinical language honed from years of caregiving for sick relatives. When an ER resident tried to clear the bay of parents, a senior physician intervened. "He's helping. Let him stay." Within 40 minutes, vitals stabilized. In a nearby alcove, Angela repeated through tears that the hospital had nearly killed her child. Behind her, security reviewed footage showing Angela instructing the same family friend to phone her nurse sister before the crash. The next morning, another summit. Angela demanded an immediate transfer to a celebrity children's hospital 3 hours away and threatened malpractice action. Insurance balked. The current hospital preferred stabilization first. After protracted negotiation, including John's offer to personally cover non-covered transport, the transfer was scheduled for 48 hours later pending insurer sign-off. Privately, John contacted Dr. Gallagher. "If Angela sues, know that I won't stand against you." His only request: full disclosure to the receiving hospital. 2 days later, the ambulance pulled away. John half expected staff to applaud the departure. Angela's behavior in this saga reveals a chilling blueprint of covert narcissistic tactics. Administrative exclusion, leveraging intake staff and policy loopholes to sideline the other parent. Smear campaign, hallway whispers, selective phone calls, and planted doubts eroding John's credibility. Proxy experts, a friend's out-of-state nurse sister, sowing confusion and second-guessing license providers. Crisis manufacturing, amplifying complications to demand dramatic interventions and reassert control. Victim triangulation, public swoons and legal threats painting herself hero and martyr while professionals scramble. Through it all, the patient's well-being became secondary to Angela's need to control the narrative: who was saint, who was sinner, and who would be forever remembered as a savior. In the end, John learned a harrowing truth. In the arena of narcissistic abuse, even a hospital ward can become a stage, a child's illness a prop, and medical professionals unwitting actors in an elaborate drama known as Sleight of Mind. Note, John did not then and never question that he wasn't a father, continued fatherly support, and remained very close and experienced much enjoyment with her.